right, everyone. Hello and welcome to Ramble number 2. In this ramble, I want to go deeper into the new skill that just passed the poll. I wanted to make a video that talked about why I voted no on the poll, but I guess it's too late to do that now. I just didn't get around to it. So we'll change the tone a little bit. I honestly can't even be mad. The new skill passed at over 80%. Obviously, everybody wanted it, so I'll accept it at this point. But I want to tell you why I voted no, and also what weren't the reasons that I was accused of. First of all, nostalgia. Nostalgia is completely dead. We need to stop using that as an excuse. If it's a bad update, I'm going to vote no, whether I'm nostalgic or not. The next thing is people were accusing the no voters of not wanting any updates at all, which may be true for a few people, but for most people, we like updates. We like updates that we find that are going to be good for the game and that are fun, though. And then another thing was spite voting. I don't believe anybody was spite voting in this case. I don't think anybody has a vendetta against people who like skilling, so wanting to re-obtain my max cape was not a reason I voted no. Like, I'm okay with doing that. That's not going to be that big of a deal. The reason I did vote no was I just genuinely don't really enjoy skilling anymore. I've maxed twice now, so I'm kind of over the whole gathering, combining 14 of one thing with 14 of another. It's just not fun anymore. It doesn't do it for me. And another thing was the polling redesign kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, when they first announced it, I knew immediately. I was like, oh gosh, okay, this is how they're going to get a new skill into the game. I can see it now, you know? And not everybody will agree with most of the things I just said, but that's okay. But I do still have some concerns with the polling system that they just made. One of the things is it removes like abrasive questions that might elicit a negative response, which is what makes people vote no. So they kind of make questions more fluffy and nice just to get the yes vote, and then they're going to develop the content they want to put in the game. So we're going to be getting a lot of the sure, why not type votes. And this is important because we shouldn't be saying sure, why not, because if we keep saying that, we're going to get content, and we don't want content. We want good content. So if it's not a heck yes, it's a no. Should not be voting with the mindset of why not. It's just going to be bad for the game. We really need to get these mods to give us some good content. Another thing with the polling system is it made it a lot easier for things to come into the game. So that's first of all not great. But second of all, it also lowered the passing percentage by 5%, which makes it even easier for things to come into the game. So it's going to be real interesting to see if anything fails a poll, because it seems like it's going to be pretty hard for things to fail. But only time will tell. Another thing was one of the pitches they said was this was going to save dev time. But the more I think about it, the more I feel like that was some kind of selling point, because it's like, okay, we voted yes on skilling, but now they're gonna go through all this dev time anyway, probably even more than what they would have if we voted like warning, for example. You know, they developed it a little bit and we said no. This is like, okay, we said yes, so now we have to spend like way more time than normal just to get something that might get pushed back because it's not where the players want it to be. I hope everything works out. Honestly, I'm hopeful for the future. A lot of the updates that are coming next year look really good. I'm excited for new prayers, some new bosses. The new quest looks good, but I do really want to talk about this new skill that just passed. I haven't had much influence from other players. I haven't really been listening. I've been busy in real life doing my thing, but I've kind of been thinking ever since the skill passed, like what I would want it to be. So I'm going to share that with you guys. First of all, I care about the health of the game. I want this game to last a really long time. So some things I think need to come from the new skill are as follows. Number one, it needs to have some kind of gold sink. It doesn't need to be crazy. It just needs to have some sort of way to get some of the gold out of the game. I think since GE tax came out, this hasn't been as big of an issue, but it's still good to have as many gold sinks in a game like this as possible. Another thing is an item sink. Now, this is probably a bigger issue because we have a lot of items that are worth next to nothing in this game. And that's why I think invention has been popping up a lot on social media. Another thing is we need to figure out a way to redistribute the wealth. Right now, there are only, I wouldn't want to give a percentage to it, but there's not very many players that have like all the gear in the game, like 10, 20 bill, max everything. You know, most of the player base is like mid game, and they're looking at items like the Tumikin Shadow, for example. It's 1.3 bill right now. And they're looking at that thing like, how the heck am I ever going to afford something like that? And that's just one item for one attack style. Like, so we need to figure out a way to get these guys the gear that they desire. And I think a good way to do that is to redistribute the wealth from the players that want to get the fast XP and max as quickly as possible, even get 200 mil, or unlock better rewards. We need to get these players to be buying things from the low to mid level players. The last thing is I think it needs to integrate other skills, it needs to fit the game, and it needs to have rewards that fit too. So that's kind of a lot of things that I want this skill to do. And granted, you know, not all of these things need to happen, but it'd be nice. It would help with the health of the game, other than, you know, being a good marketing tool and bringing in new players. It should also do some other things too. Now, I have some negative thoughts also about a new skill. So, this is what it should not be. It should not be a buyable skill. I mean, like herb lore. Just buy tens of thousands of herbs and you add it to potions. It shouldn't be like construction where you just buy the planks and you craft the same table for 20 hours and you get 99. It would help with the whole redistribution of wealth thing, but I don't know, it's just boring to do that. Another thing I don't want it to be is a plain gathering skill, like, for example, divination. I don't want to just be sitting there collecting this energy stuff AFK for hundreds of hours. Just doesn't sound fun. A production skill. So this is like smithing, herb lore, crafting, where you're just sitting at a bank using 14 of one thing on 14 of another. That's not a good idea either. And then one big point I wanted to hit home here is I don't want a skill that calls for months of collecting components just to train the skill. Things like herbler, where you just have to gather herbs for months and months at a time, doing farm runs, doing raids, all this stuff just to make enough potions to get a level. Another example of this is summoning, where you had to, for those of you who aren't familiar with summoning, it's a skill in RS3, first of all. And when it was released, everybody had to kill monsters and collect charms to even make the summoning pouches. And this took a very long time. It was not fun. I mean, I think it took me like 3 months just to get to the Pack Yak stage. It wasn't even 99. And that's just because it took so long to get all those charms for summoning. So I don't think we should go that route. And I just think that's because it's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it's not hype, it's more of a chore if there's content like that. Next thing I want to say is I don't want a reskin from RS3. Divination. It's boring. You just stand there and collect energy. I don't know if it's been updated since I played it, but that's all literally the only thing you did when it first came out. Invention. I believe invention would be good for the game health. However, I think we need to reserve destined slot upgrades for things like raids and endgame PVM and one-time challenges like the Inferno. I think the best gear should come from things like that, not just breaking things down from a skill and adding them to the existing destined slots to make them even better. However, if something like this does come into the game, I think it would be good to add perks to like mid game armor, like upgrading the Abyssal Whip like the Tentacle Whip did was good. That's a good example. Little things like that. Maybe upgrades to like scaling outfits or something, but to make it hype, you would literally have to make it change end game PVM metas, and I don't think that's a good route personally. Another thing is summoning, and like I said, collecting those charms was really bad. I also think that would shake up end game PVM metas. I don't think it's good. We should reserve power creep for future content and not just put it all in one skill. Lastly, dungeoneering. I think this is a popular suggestion as well for the new skill, just like a reskin. I don't think it's gonna work just because, first of all, the prestige system was kind of meh. The rewards would not really shine today. We already have a rapier and an elder maul, like, to replace those chaotic weapons. So the rewards would have to be like completely redone. I just don't see it fitting. It was fun back in the day, but my idea kind of incorporates some of the elements of dungeoneering. But what I've been trying to do since I found that the skill was gonna pass is try to find or think about things that would get me excited to remax and really enjoy a new skill. So I kind of took some ideas from dungeoneering and then the item sync concept of invention to think of concepts for our new skill, which I think should be sailing. Would be a nautical based dungeoneering like activity. All right, so let me explain how I think the skill should go. This is just my ideas brainstorming and what I think would be fun. Doesn't necessarily have to be this exactly, but I think if you listen to what I'm going to say, you might come up with a couple cool ideas yourself. So first of all, this would be a up to 6-player activity. So I think you should be able to do this with your friends, but I don't think you should be punished that much for going at it solo. Just to give you a basic like vision of what this is, I imagine boarding a ship, sailing off, coming into contact with other ships and islands that have things to do on them. And where the dungeoneering part comes in is like, okay, what if this island was like dungeoneering was, where you would just work your way through this island basically, and at the end you would have some kind of loot. Now, I don't think it should be linear. I think it should be kind of scattered, where you could really venture out and explore that island and loot little chests here and there and get some side loot. But if you want to be really efficient, I think you should just be going straight to the end. But there is that option of exploring, potentially upgrading your gear like you could in Dungeoneering. But that's like the basic idea. But the details are this: there will be ships and there will be maps. The ships will be upgradable. The ships will also come with a crew that is also upgradable with items from the game or things that you get from training the skill. Now, the second thing is maps. So I think that there should be maps to traverse through this skill and through these islands and the ocean and all this. And these maps will basically determine how much XP and how much loot and how difficult the encounter will be. So I think there should be a basic map that you can just get for a small fee, which is where this gold sync comes in. Maybe like 50k per player. You can get a basic map from an NPC, kind of like a Slayer task, and you can just go and do that encounter. Okay? The next map would be like more of a detailed map. So it's more detailed. It's better for finding better loot, and the encounter is going to be harder, but you're going to get better rewards from it. Now, these maps are going to be tradable so that low to mid-level players can sell the better maps to high-level players for more money, because these maps are going to be rewards from the activity as well. Now, there should be an even better map that players would really have to go out of their way to find them. Like I said, this island there should be stuff scattered all over this island, so you'd really have to go searching to find these intricate maps that give the best loot, the best XP. Now, there would be two types of encounters. There would be sea encounters. So you'd have to defend your own ship and also steal from the enemy's ship, kill the other enemies. So this would result in potentially losing some things if you don't do well at defending. But you could also gain things from a good offense. Island encounters would be an island-based dungeon, as I explained earlier. This would be a Dungeoneering-esque encounter that would vary in difficulty depending on the map and your sailing level. The last big idea I had was, what if we could upgrade your ship, your crew, your XP rates, your loot rates? So this would kind of replace the prestige system of what Dungeoneering had. And basically, it's this. There would be, let's call them charms, I guess. There would be charms that you could get as rewards from looting chests, from killing monsters, etc., etc. Now, you can add these charms to your ship and you would get a boost of something. Like, for example, you get a 5% boost in your power, which would speed up the encounter slightly. Okay, now these charms would also be tradable, so good charms could be sold to higher level players. Again, redistribution of wealth, so that the players that want to get to the highest ranks and get the fastest XP rates, they can just basically buy it, but also there's a good way to train the skill without doing that. Now, for high level players, they can go for faster XP, yeah. Now, the next idea I have is you can combine the lower tiered charms for better ones. So basically, you'd get basic charms from the raid or the encounter, and then you could turn in 3 of them to get an upgraded one. And then you could turn in 3 of those upgraded ones to get an even luckier one. So essentially, you'd have 3 tiers of charms: a basic, a good, and a lucky charm. Now, depending on the tier of your charm is how long it lasts, because these will not be permanent boosts. The basic one's only going to last you 3 hours, and it's going to work like an anima tree does, where like it's 3 days whether you're logged in or not. So the basic one's only going to last you 3 hours. Now the rate you get these is not going to be that great, but you'll be able to basically maintain having basic charms on at all times. Now for the good charms, the next tier up, it's going to be a longer duration, and it's also going to be better effect. So like if a basic charm gave you 5% better loot, for example, this good charm would give you 10% better loot, and it would last 12 hours instead of 3. And like I said, it's whether you're logged in or not, so use it or lose it. Now, if you combine 3 of those good charms, you get a lucky charm, and this would double it even more. So that good charm gave you 10% better loot. Now this lucky charm will give you 20%, and it'll last 36 hours or 3 days. Now these are arbitrary numbers, but this is just to give you guys an idea of what my thoughts were. Now, a concept I came up with for an item sync is this. Instead of adding charms to your ship, you can also add items. For example, you could add an abyssal whip to your ship, and it would give you 5% power. So you would be able to complete the raid or the encounter faster. If you added a light bearer ring to your ship, you would get 20% or 10% better loot. So you could add 3 light bearer rings to your ship and you'd get 30% better loot. Now, the thing is, these items would also work like charms, where after a certain amount of time, they'd just be gone. So I think there should be also a system where, you know, the more expensive the item, the longer it lasts and the greater the effect. So like an abyssal whip is what, 2 or 3 mil? So it could last a day and give a 5% boost. Something more expensive, like let's say, sheesh, what's a good weapon here? An abyssal bludgeon. Oh gosh, that's like 20 mil. So now this is going to last you 5 days and give you a 15% boost, for example. So it would all be kind of predetermined what gives you what boost. But I think the most important thing is it syncs common items out of the game like Pegasian crystals, arcane prayer scrolls, abyssal whips, kraken tentacles. So we're also making it more profitable to do that mid-tier Slayer content for the mid-level players. So we're indirectly making them more money that way too. They don't even have to train the skill. These items are just going to be more valuable. Now, you could either trade in these items for charms or just add them directly to the ship. It doesn't really matter, just as long as they're getting sunk out of the game and there's appropriate time and strategy applied to one. Now for the charms and adding them to the ship, I think this should go with what your sailing level is. So for example, it'd be like Hunter, where from 1 to 20 sailing, you could only use 1 charm. From 20 up, you could use 2, 40, you could use 3, 60, you could use 4, and 80, you could use 5. Meaning you could use 5 charms at the same time. So if you're a wealthy player, for example, you could buy 5 lucky charms to get 20% more XP each and add those to your ship. So you'd be getting double XP for 3 days. However, that would be pretty expensive, I would hope. But that's just an example of how this all could work, how it could redistribute wealth, how it could be an item sync, how it could be a GP sync, and how this skill could really thrive. I mean, it would be fun to just go in, you would conquer this island and loot this chest at the end, and along the way you can build your own armor, you can make wooden spears and, you know, whatever items you can gather up along the way. Mid-level players can go around collecting all of the intricate maps and things that they can sell for more money. And higher level players can buy up all those things and get better XP rates at a cost. In terms of rewards from sailing, I have not put much thought into that. I just thought, oh, this would be enjoyable for me to actually play. But some of the rewards would be maps that you could use to get better XP or sell them. Charms, which would give you different boosts throughout the raid. These charms, like the basic ideas I had was power, which would make it go faster, XP, which would just boost your percentage of XP. So combining those two could potentially be the meta. And then a third one, which was the loot percentage. So if you want more money from the skill, you can use these charms. Looting chests, I think, should work like Sepulcher, where you're kind of just getting little bits of loot here and there. And then at the end, you should have a little bit bigger of a loot. And then for the bigger rewards, I'm sure the JMods will come up with something good. But, you know, we're probably about a year before this skill comes out. So I have faith that we'll come up with something. But that's my thoughts on what the new skill should be, sailing. You guys enjoyed, please drop a like, comment what you think and what you think should be added to the skill. Maybe if you have a completely different idea, what is that idea? What would it be like? Drop a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe for more rambles and progression. Thanks for watching.